Hello out there in YouTube land. This is Morris, man. As always, I thank you guys for coming to my channel. I appreciate the comments and the ongoing subscriptions. Today I'm going to do a quick special video. I got a question from one of my subscribers. His name is Bo. How you doing out there, Bo? And I kind of felt the question that he asked. Actually, he asked me a couple of questions. And I felt that it was better to do this in video form as opposed to just, sending him a reply, because the question that he asked is kind of helpful to a lot of new beginners of playing bass. And the question is actually a couple of them, and I'm going to answer them in the sequence that he asked them. He says, I love your videos, appreciate it. And everything that you play on the guitar usually join in on you, bass, or vice versa. And the question is, I was wondering if you would do a video about string gauges, particularly bass. I honestly don't know the sound difference between light versus heavy. Is it both a tonal and sound difference? Then the bottom part is he's telling me that he enjoyed my drum videos, and I enjoy playing drums. So thank you for the acknowledgement. And his question here is, what do you think about the Linn drums Prince defined a decade ago? And, he doesn't want to go that route because he don't want his drums to sound like Prince or sound like Prince sound. So the first question is, again, about the bass strings and what's the difference between the gauges. And that is a very good question, because I touched on this on one of my previous videos when I did my review of my great jazz bass and some of the things I've done to modify it, because I put a little sponge here, tape it so when I'm playing it won't slide down my leg, and I changed the strings. And I'm going to try to do this quickly. I just recently kind of discovered something that I've been kind of pondering for years, but I didn't give it that much thought to really go into detail to find the answer. And that's because mainly I'm a guitar player. The majority of the bands I play in play rhythm guitar. They sometimes let me switch off on bass, a little keyboards, a little drums. But my main instrument is guitar. I love to play guitar. I enjoy playing bass too, and bass was actually one of my first instruments that I started to learn on. But I started to realize that the strings are real thick, and after playing for an hour, 2 hours or a day, you get blisters on your fingers and your thumbs, and it gets to the point where it becomes painful to play. And again, like I said in my other video, I asked the gentleman who at that time was playing for a living, bass player, and I said, how do you combat the blisters and the soreness? And he told me that I'm not playing enough. So I played more and I got more blisters and more soreness. So that wasn't the answer to my question. And here it is. There are, I guess, sometimes trade secrets, because I'm looking at Marcus Miller, who plays probably every day because he plays for a living, and why isn't his hands all swollen and blistered up? Or Larry Graham's. These guys normally, they hold bass style as thumping. So why aren't they fingers all swollen and blistered? And I believe the answer to that question is lighter gauge strings. It wasn't until recently that I realized that bass strings come in light gauges like guitar strings. So I found the lightest gauge that I could find, and it's this brand here. Can't get that, but you see it. Extra light gauges, and the lightest gauge on the G string is 35, and it's nickel round. So I put those on my guitar, and I made some slight adjustments as far as straightening out the neck a little bit, lowering the bridge, and I got it where I can literally play this guitar now for days without any major soreness. So that's kind of the answer to the question. And also the question was the difference in tonality. Well, of course, anything lighter will have a lighter tone. The thicker the strings, I think the deeper the tone. But you can fix that in the mix as far as a good EQ. You can kind of, tweak it to get some more bottom. But that's the answer to that question. They don't tell you about getting extra light gauges so it go easy on your fingers. Because you think about it, this is thick steel, and hitting this all day long, thick steel, it swells up your fingers. So, again, I went out to find answers to that question that had been plaguing me for years, as far as why aren't these guys' fingers all swollen and sore, and why is my fingers all swollen and sore? And that's the answer to the question. Again, lighter gauge strings. Now, again, you might have a slight difference in tone, but you can fix that in the mix because as you see the covers that I've done with this guitar since I've changed the strings, I get bottom when I need to get bottom for certain songs and when I'm trying to do high-end stuff. And also another interesting tidbit of information. Again, you have to determine what kind of bass player you want to be. Are you one of those guys like Marcus Miller where you're doing a lot of thumping or just a lot of finger action, you know? And then that kind of can determine what type of guitar you want because the Fender Jazz Bass, I believe, covers that extremely well as far as that high-end tone to get that slap technique because there are a lot of bass players that have been playing for years and they never even thought about why do their guitars sound so heavy and sluggish versus the guy on the recording who sounds, his tone sounds so bright and crisp. And that's because of, in most cases, the guitar and more so the gauge strings. Because just like with guitar strings, when you put them on, they brand new, they have that real brightness, snappy, bright tone to them, and then like a week, they go dull on you because of the oils and dirt on your hand deposits on the coils of the strings, and it makes it go flat, you know. But you can remedy that, and it's a pain in the butt, but you can by continuously boiling your strings, as opposed to going out and buying new strings every month, you know. And that's what I'm getting to the point where I'm just going to boil my strings as opposed to constantly buying new ones to get that new sound. Because when you boil them, it goes back to that bright tone. So hopefully that has answered your question. And I just want to touch on this again quickly before I finish off of that question. Again, there are a lot of bass players, because bass to me and drums are very difficult as far as getting a great tone. It's not that difficult to get a decent tone on your guitar, but a lot of bass players, they playing and they tone is real muddy and just buzzy and just not pleasant. And the drummers, you know, it's hard to get that good crisp drum. Sounds like you're beating on pots and pans. But in order to remedy that issue with your bass guitar, depending on the guitar, if you want to do slap stuff, get you a jazz bass, trade out the strings, get a lighter gauge so you won't be having blisters the next morning after you play. And there are a lot of guitar players that don't really understand, or should I say realize that that's one of the reasons why they're not getting that sound like off the record. Because I look at some of the covers on YouTube, and I don't knock anybody, but there was a couple of people that were doing a cover of that old song called Glide by Pleasure. And it's a bass player song, you know, any bass player from the day had to know how to play that. And I'm watching these guys play it, and they don't have that brightness like the guy on the recording. My term I use is thumping lumber because it just sounds like it's real heavy and it's real heavy in tone. It's not bright and snappy. And again, that's the reason why, because of changing out the strings and selecting a certain guitar, bass guitar, to get that tone. Because to me, the precision bass really don't deliver that slap tone like the jazz bass. So moving on to the next question. And the next question again was, what do you think about the Linn drums? Prince defined that sound a decade ago. I always tell it like it is. Then and now, the Linn drums sound like shit to me. You know, I think the Linn drums is one of those drums where it was like only the elite can possess this particular item at this time, because when the Linn drums came out, they were like $2,000, and most struggling musicians could not afford a $2,000 drum machine. Only the well-to-do artists and the well-to-do musician, but for the most of us, it was out of reach, and that sometimes makes it even more of a desire for some reason to acquire, because thanks to marketing, they want you to want this machine that you can't have because it costs too much. And once you achieve it, you're great, you feel good about it, but really, what do you actually have for your $2,000? The sounds on the Linn drums were just mediocre. The programming was even worse, you know. So, I mean, when I listen to the Linn drums on When Doves Cry, it doesn't move me. It just, nothing about those sounds and that drum machine did anything for me. Now, when the Roland, was that TR-808 came out, 909, everybody took notice of that because they were very unique drum sounds. But I think one reason why the Linn drums were so expensive at that particular time was they were one of the first drum machines on the market that actually had, quote unquote, live, real recorded stored drum sounds. They were actually drum sounds that they sampled and stored into the machine. So they wasn't electronic based like the 909 or the 808. So I think that's one reason why it was such a big rave. But me personally, it didn't do anything to me or didn't do nothing for me. Some of the most memorable drum machines to me was the Akai MP60, because you could basically get any type of samples, drums, and load it in there. And the Roland series, the R8 and the R10, had really nice, crisp, like jazzy, real drum sounds too. And they were only like $500 for the R5 and about $1,000 for the R10 when it first came out. But by the time they discontinued it, you can get it for like $200. And to this day, I had one till someone stole it out of my storage locker where I used to live years ago. But Linn drums, overpriced, overrated, crappy drum sounds, crappy drum programming. So that's my take on that. So hopefully this has been an enlightening video for the beginners and some of the seasoned players. And I hope that, again, you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, take care. Thanks.